Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of the Uncrackable conversation. This is a virtual conversation where we bring together industry leaders and dive deeper into the technicalities as well as the geopolitical trends of some of the most emerging technologies. What's happening, where it is happening, what are the pros, what are the cons. We have had very successful 2 episodes, and a big shout out to our media partner, Bitcoin.com, for ensuring that these episodes reach millions of viewers across the globe. And on that note, I would really like to welcome our guests today, Anthony Day from VeChain, Anna from QSec, Bilger from Kyndryl, and Bjorn Packman from Dfinity. And without further ado, I think we'll kick off this conversation. All of you have such an immense background and so much expertise. Respectfully invite you on stage to share your background, and that's how we'll go with the conversation. Let's start with you, Anthony. Welcome to the Uncrackable conversation.
Thank you so much for the kind welcome. Happy Friday, everybody. Very happy to be here. Little jet lag, not going to lie. I landed about 2 or 3 hours ago on a flight back from New York, so I will do my best to keep things up, vibe, and interesting. But for those who don't know me, I've been working in Web3 and blockchain technology for the last 7 years of my life. Prior to that, about 5 or 6 years in systems integrators like Deloitte and IBM. And then prior to that, I worked for Michael Porter's consulting company. My day job, I work for VeChain Foundation. Our job is to help people find ways to use blockchain technology for real world applications and sustainability every day. So my interest is helping the real world engage with technology, to use the technology capabilities that are there in emerging technology or in emerging platforms like blockchain, like AI, like mobility, and maybe soon like quantum, to drive transformation.
I think we're facing some network issue with Anthony. All right, while I think, Anthony, if you're able to share us, we lost you. You're back. Sorry, there was a glitch.
Starlink has let me down. I apologize. If you lost me after "Hi, I'm Anthony Day," that's probably a good place to move on to one of the next speakers. So we can do more about me later.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you, Anthony. Anna, if I can request you to come in.
So hi, everyone, and thank you for having me here. So my name is Anna Beata Kalisz Hedegaard, and I've been having background in physics, quantum physics, on the theoretical side and actually experimental too. I did both quantum field theory and a lot of nanomaterials. I studied electronics, telecommunication with applications for radars systems, and I always did a lot of research in those areas. And then I worked as a patent engineer in the fields of AI, blockchain, and quantum. That was what we were working on. And then for the last 2 years, I've been doing entrepreneurship myself. I am an enthusiast of quantum. That's a childhood obsession with teleportation that is driving it. So I have a deep tech startup in Bremen, where we're looking on the entanglement source for the future quantum internet networks. And that's going slow, but it's a typical, old school garage type of innovation. And it's like exactly how it should be at this stage. And then I'm leading QSec Dev, where we're building education and business platform and bringing people together for conversations on quantum, emerging technologies, and then we support ecosystem as a small boutique advisory.
Thank you, Anna. And I really appreciate the efforts that you're taking to spread awareness about quantum security. It was a pleasure to join one of your workshops. It's really engaging, the way you put together the industry and specifically diving into the aspects of quantum. So much respect for that.
It was great to have you.
Okay. Bjorn, if I can request you to step in, please.
Sure. Thank you for the invitation, Kapil. Really great to be here. My name is Bjorn Packman. I'm head of research at the Dfinity Foundation, which is the main contributor to the Internet Computer Protocol, ICP. My background is in cryptography. I joined the blockchain space during my time at IBM, and then in 2019, I joined the Dfinity Foundation as a cryptography researcher. I've been leading the research team here at Dfinity for 3 years now. What's specific about what we do? ICP is a very scalable protocol, and in particular, it's meant to host entire applications, front end and back end on chain. So that's kind of very specific. I guess that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Bjorn. And I really want to call out the contributions of ICP. This is a project that I think I've been following from the earliest days, including when you launched the ICP OS. I was a participant of that, so I hold a couple of NFTs and accesses to the ICP OS. So I really believe in the whole decentralized internet mission that ICP is leading. So it's a pleasure, Bjorn, to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Kapil.
Bill, if I can request you.
Yeah, hi everybody. Bill Genovese. I am with Kyndryl. Kyndryl is a former division of IBM. Used to be IBM Global Technology Services. I think I recognize Anthony from IBM days, and probably born we crossed paths. I was with IBM for 11 years in 6 countries abroad. I've worked in 4 divisions, a number of patents there in IBM Red Books. I was last an executive architect and client technical leader there. Since then, I've worked for Huawei in China. I led corporate strategy for the whole global banking and financial services market penetration for them in 70 countries. They had a quantum simulator that they built, and on their public cloud. And also we launched blockchain as a service. So I've been working at the intersection and convergence of these 2 technologies for 6-7 years now, at least. I'm also a 4-time CIO and CTO. After I left Huawei and came back to the US, I worked as a CIO and CTO for 2 blockchain companies and also as a co-founder for a digital asset exchange in Miami. So now I lead, I have a dual role in Kyndryl. I'm a consulting partner covering capital markets and financial services, but I'm also our global go-to-market leader for quantum services and consulting across our portfolio, which covers quantum safe. We have a partner, Sandbox AQ, that we're using for discovery and assessment, carve out from Google, who you may have heard of. And then we're a number of partners on the application side. And then we're working with the 3 major cloud hyperscalers in terms of their quantum computing as a service offering. So.
Oh, very interesting. So actually, Bill, I would love to kickstart the conversation today with you, because this is exactly what we want to dive deeper into, the convergence of quantum, blockchain, and of course, touching no conversation is complete without we talk about AI and how that is forming a piece of it. One of the most talked about thing when everybody talks about quantum and blockchain is that it's new, or some people will talk about that it's too early. But you mentioned that you have been doing this for like good 6 to 7 years. I would love to start on that point. How have you seen that transformation happening over the course of last 6 to 7 years? When you started the convergence of quantum and blockchain, how was the scene like? What triggered stepping into that direction, and what triggered the investment of the company that you were working with into that direction? And how has it evolved today in 2025? How much development have happened?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, from a personal perspective and my own, personal point of view and strategy in the companies that I work with, I've more pivoted from blockchain to quantum than I've converged. And the reason I've pivoted is because I developed a framework in Huawei that if we were going to publicly go into that space with blockchain, you've got to be able to meet 5 criteria to disrupt traditional legacy financial services systems all at the same time. I've been to a number of conferences. I spoke behind Vitalik Buterin in China on the same stage. Everybody in the industry, as an example, has always been talking about I'm faster than visa processing. Or another criteria I've met is I'm the most secure blockchain. Well, my point there is, well, that's like saying you're the most secure ice cube or the most frozen ice cube. You're supposed to be frozen, right? So you get my point. So there's a number of criteria, and one of keen interest from a convergence perspective here, and I still haven't seen one of these 5 criteria all met together in production in enterprise 100 clients, Fortune 100 clients. Another one is on-chain and off-chain integrations, public and private. Okay, and this is really a convergence tipping point from not only from quantum safe, okay, but from performance perspective also with quantum on-chain and off-chain integration and processing. I mean, there's examples scattered here and there, but production ready in financial services, we're still struggling 10 years later. Okay, and my thesis with our company as we're moving into this space is it's convergence. Where Gen AI is going, agentic AI, it's going to need that accelerant of optimization and compute power that quantum is going to bring to the table. Once we get past the hype and fear bubble of quantum safe and PQC, which is overplayed in my mind. Right now it's almost like the market is saying, keep the big bag quantum computer out of your enterprise. We're going to put up a wall, and I think that's an overplayed, I'm not on board with that assumption. We need to let it in to optimize and converge the technologies around it. So.
Bjorn, what's your take on the whole quantum and blockchain coming together?
I'm probably viewing this more from a cryptographer's perspective. So I'm not really sure on what the convergence here is, but there is clearly a threat, which is from the blockchain perspective, which I think you with Quranium are also addressing and or giving one solution for this. And that is obviously like a lot of the cryptography we're using today, a lot of the efficient cryptography we have that is practically deployed is going to be broken when quantum computers reach a sufficient scale. Of course, we don't know exactly when that's going to be, but we expect that it is going to happen. So at some point we will have to adapt things. And then what does it mean from a cryptographer perspective? I mean, we always, like, cryptography is always based on some hardness assumptions. So we assume certain algorithmic problems to be hard. And as long as these problems are hard, we can build secure cryptographic systems on top of them. And now you can be, like, in the classical space, we understand the hardness very well. And like, we know what to build against classical compute. We also know that the schemes we have today would be completely broken by a quantum computer. Now you can go very conservative and use as small assumptions as you can, which I think the signature scheme that you're using in Quranium is a good example of this Sphinx scheme. The disadvantage of this, and now that has to fit your use case, is it tends to be inefficient. So a signature on Sphinx is like more than 100 times larger than a signature with ECDSA, right? So that has to suit your particular use case. If you want to have very high throughput, very high performance, there's going to be a challenge. And you can also be somewhere in between and try to find assumptions that are hopefully still hard for a quantum computer, although we, of course, never know for sure, and be more efficient in the space between. And then you can be a bit more efficient, but also you run a little higher risk that something ends up not being secure. So there's a great example from last year. There was a famous paper, cryptography paper, 224/555, which came from a researcher in China, and he claimed that he broke a large set of cryptographic assumptions that we use for post-quantum schemes on a quantum computer. Now, of course, it's hard to verify because we don't have quantum computers that can execute these algorithms. So it took like 2 weeks until it was figured out that there was a bug in the algorithm. But anyway, what I want to go to is if we make these bets, so these would be NIST standardized schemes, by the way. If we make these assumptions, we like, there's so few specialists in this area compared to like classical compute that we have a lot less assurance on, this is actually really a problem that's hard for a quantum computer, right? And so this is now putting everyone that is building these protocols in this kind of tough spot. Like, when do you move over from the very efficient and well understood classical cryptography? When do you move to quantum safe cryptography? What are the trade-offs that you're willing to make, that you can accept in your platform use case? So for me, as a cryptographer, I view it from this perspective, and it's a super challenging and interesting time to be in. And I guess we'll all have to see how we adapt our systems in order for this to be secure in the future.
Right. And one more thing, Bill, you touched upon it, when blockchains or some protocols claim that we are the most secure, I think the definition of security also in the post-quantum era, that needs to be looked at. So what do we call secure? One is pre-quantum secure, one is post-quantum secure. So
Well,
I think that's one.
yeah,
Yeah.
what I can add to that too, which I wanted to mention, and I forgot there was, one thing we looked at is, and there's been a number of studies and research on this, how does a blockchain technology stack map to the OSI model? Okay, so there's the intersection point in a lot of ways. At a purest sense, we're only talking application layer. Okay, but when we get into the integration between public blockchains, i.e. Ethereum, and private, and we were looking and partnering with R3 Corda, and one could argue, well, is that really a blockchain? But you get my sense. It's permission behind the firewall. Okay, so when you're looking at security, okay, and where blockchain needs to go, and then internet technologies, and to your point, Bjorn, NIST has put out guidance in terms of security categorization by category. Category 1 is digital signatures, asymmetric keys. Well, what is that in terms of a use case? That's internet, data and transfer. So where is blockchain and the OSI model intersecting, okay, with the OSI model, and at what layers? And where should it be in terms of vulnerability? We decompose the stack of blockchain and try to, in an ecosystem basis, map it to OSI and who was covering what. A lot of gaps. And that was a concern for us. So.
Yeah. Anthony, I saw you reacting to that. I would invite you to share your views, please.
Yeah, no, I like where this is going, and I think it's probably helpful. I definitely don't have the technical chops of my fellow panelists here, so I'm not going to try and out cryptography anybody here, but I would probably, for those listening who probably may not also be as cryptographically qualified or technically qualified as some of our panelists, is probably just help with a little bit of framing around, you talked about convergence at the start, so yeah. Whatever we're trying to do in the world at large is ultimately we're trying to build applications that help people do the jobs that they're trying to do, whether that's trying to send $1 of value from the US to Indonesia, whether that's trying to help people verify some activity to prove they are who they say they are, whatever it is that we're trying to do with the application. To play video games could be anything, right? Yeah. At the end of the day, something that creates value. And somewhere along the line, we got to a point where we think, actually, there are some useful primitives in decentralized technology that make building on them slightly more useful, whether that's the ability to create digital tokens, whether that's the ability to have open source decentralized infrastructure that's available for everybody to use, everybody to build on, that we believe is resilient, or that is more sensor resistant than a centralized cloud may be, for example, or at least has more redundancy to it than a centralized cloud may have. These are all good primitives that you can build into your application. And then now we're at this interesting intersection where we've got AI and quantum, and both of them are sort of competing for the make stuff go faster part, right? Because broadly speaking, an AI can perform certain activities faster than a regular computer could do in terms of analysis or in terms of inference, or a quantum computer could potentially, maybe with less precision, but could certainly accelerate certain functions more so than an AI could. And so what you're really looking for from the convergence perspective is, where are the applications where I need a combination of infrastructure that is decentralized or finance primitives that can be automated. So for example, if you think about the agentic web or agents making use of value across the internet, they're unlikely to be typing in a six-digit PIN code into their banking app, scanning their face and continuing on to pay with Visa a lot of the time. That's not to say we can't use traditional banking rails. We can absolutely for very many things. But the fact that the large proportion of the banking and payments industries are looking at the concept of stablecoins tells you that they see value in decentralized or at least distributed infrastructure. Bill mentioned R3, Hyperledger Fabric, Canton, take your pick of the blockchain-ish DLTs, distributed ledgers. These also have value, right? And it's not one blockchain, it's not better than the other. I don't think any blockchain has anything more than most at this point in time. You have nodes, you have smart contracts, you have the ability for things to run automatically, you have tokens, et cetera, et cetera. Blockchains have that capability. The convergent point for me is at the application level. What do you need to go faster, and are you better with quantum computing, which is fast but slightly more vague, or AI? I want to very briefly touch on is quantum a threat to decentralized infrastructure, decentralized applications as well, because I think the answer is absolutely yes. The question then becomes how and where do we need to reconfigure our applications to reduce the threat surface? I spent the last 2.5 years working with a project called Midnight on zero knowledge cryptography. The general principle behind a lot of these things is, what is encrypted can be decrypted if you have a computer that's powerful enough. So try not to put encrypted stuff publicly for people to find, and try and use other technologies to do your verification away from the public eye. So as Bill said, how do we mix public and private, whether that's blockchain and AI, blockchain and quantum, on-chain or off-chain? Really, we're thinking about what's the better way to reconfigure your application architecture to make use of the infrastructure primitives that you continue to see value in. There's my take on it, or at least my summation of the research space.
Yeah, and there's one very interesting point that you touched upon, Anthony. I'll come back to you on that. That's the agentic AI piece. I would love to double click on that, because that's really picking up a lot of steam in the market. So how does it connect with the whole blockchain, and in the quantum world, how does it play out? But before that, Anna, if I can invite you, your entire focus is towards quantum security, right? And what I would love to learn from you is, of all these workshops that you run, you have interacted with industry leaders from startups to big institutions. What is the trend that you're seeing in terms of the adoption and transition to quantum security? Because there are two schools of thoughts, right? One is, of course, people who are deeply involved in research and on the technology side, they understand that this is a threat and we need to act today. And there's another school of thought which says, quantum is far, we can take a decision later. What has been your experience being literally on ground, interacting with these projects on a daily basis?
What I see is that there is a part that is very excited about technology, right? And it's always, a lot of people that work or on the quantum, on the cryptography, they also driven by development of technology. And that is very good, but that not always is the most difficult problem. So adopting the technology, and having a use cases and showing it is not only engineering problem, but it's very much communicating a value problem. And when the only driver is the threat, it's unfortunately not human appealing. We don't want to be threatened to action. We want to be typically driven by, let's say, making more money or building something. Just being afraid, we are very good in pushing it away. And what I see is that if cryptography, right, is already so behind in adopting new solutions, we've been a bit as a whole, society is a bit reluctant in keep finding and reinventing cryptography fast enough, comparing to emergence of AI and quantum. And what I see is that on one side, technology and solutions, there's plenty of ready to test, ready to apply and do solutions, but there is a lot of reluctance, like everyone is waiting for some tipping point. And I feel like at the moment we are exaggerating the significance of tipping point, as there would be nothing happening in between.
Right.
AI've been around for many years. I was just reflecting on it, and I was like, well, 20 years ago when I started studying, I had already lectures on neural networks, and there was no doubt about their significance in the way they would be processing data and things like that. So it's not just 2 years ago when ChatGPT went out, that's when the public woke up, but there is all what was happening before. And then in quantum, I think the conversation about dual use is very out there in your face. It's very much all the time on the topic. But I feel with AI, it's kind of like very underestimated that this is also dual use technology. And as much as we are developing technology to make better cryptography, to have better algorithms, to use those quantum computers. On the other side, people use exactly all of those. They use, decentralized systems. They use the AI, and they use quantum computing all the time. They use those 2 qubits and they test what they can do. They use the AI that is not yet fully capable, and they test to do that. There's not going to be a tipping point. And that's what I see all over industry, that there is waiting, but we are dealing with such a complex dynamical system that the question should be not if it's quantum proof or secure. And I thought it was really interesting what you said. What is the definition of security? Well, maybe the definition of security has to be that we have to constantly also innovate towards better paradigm of this public versus private solutions, and what is exposed and what is not, regardless where is quantum and AI, because we surely underestimate it. That's and it's too complex, I think, at the moment to say, it's in 2 years. Oh, it's in 5 years. You should be ready 5 years. What do you mean 5 years? Like, how do you would ever know? With the development and so on around the world. I mean, just plenty of brilliant people. That's just a guesswork of some magical point, but everything in between is also important and should be checked.
I mean, a couple of things before I lose. I don't want to forget these, but to your point, Anna, I mean, the example I give is the internet technology. Okay, we started with AOL and dial-up. There was no tipping point to modern day internet, right? And from a security perspective, it evolved. It wasn't like, oh, boom, we woke up one day and it's that much faster and that much secure. I mean, it's the same thing that we're talking about here. The other thing, that you said that I like is the analogy is kind of like, I don't know if you've seen, there's been a number of snippets of AI generated Tesla super motorcycles. Okay. And if Tesla ever made a super bike, okay, it probably wouldn't be accepted due to safety standards. Well, that's exactly kind of what we're facing here now. We're riding on old safety standards, and AI and quantum is accelerating the car or motorcycle, and we're reluctant to change the tires or the performance standards from a security perspective. Right.
Yeah. And what blows my mind when somebody talks about the urgency or the importance of it, it's very simple actually. If you see ECDSA, which almost all the blockchains use for private key encryption, was invented in 1985. It has been 4 decades, and the way it works is it's maths. 2 very large numbers multiplied with each other, and there's not enough compute to solve it. That's the foundation of that security. How much has the computing strength evolved? How much access do humans have today to computing strengths? Like GPUs are accessible for $2 an hour. Quantum computers, even if you don't talk about quantum computers, but that has been the evolution. NIST has already released a paper saying that after 2030, ECDSA will start getting depreciated. So it's like really loudly out there. But all it needs, I think, is sometimes, Anthony's here, so a strong marketing buzz maybe, that people need to start looking differently. So Anthony, I think I'll invite you to talk about the marketing aspect of it, let's say, right? Because, Bjorn, after that, I would love to come to you. I'm sure you had some thought on that. But the reason I want to, pick your brains on this, Anthony, is many times, and especially in the crypto and blockchain industry, every time for anything to take notice, it has to trend. Does not matter if it is relevant or not. So does it need a different lens from the way it should be sold to the larger public? What do you think about that?
That's a really interesting question. And as I think back over the last 10 years of blockchain technology, we have got every single branding and communication moment wrong consistently. And one of the reasons is we let the engineers name stuff, as is their right. They invented it, they name it. So there's that. I think you do have the crossing the chasm challenge of Bitcoin was so interestingly and so far and widely used, accepted, it kind of generated excitement. that all of a sudden, because we've got this new digital, fast-moving, highly value accruing asset, everybody suddenly thinks, well, everything is going to take off like Bitcoin, so everything is Bitcoin. And then we get into proof of work and we get into proof of stake, and consistently we call things that are confusing. Smart contracts, neither smart nor contracts, they're programmable automation on a blockchain. Stable coins, that's a good one. Just to take a recent example, right? If you haven't spent time working with coins in most of your career, what's an unstable coin? Are other coins not as stable as this one? Why does it need to be stable? Right. And yet this is the term of the day. And so these references, unfortunately, when we come to talking to the rest of the world, who has absolutely no idea anything that we do on a day-to-day basis, every one of you works in such deep areas of expertise. There are 0.0000001% of humans on the planet who could probably even hold a conversation with you about what you get to do for a day job. Everybody else is like, well, I'm just waiting for how does this benefit me and the jobs I'm trying to do, right? I'm farming, I'm working in a store, I'm running my own business, I'm whatever it is that I'm doing. I engage with technology at the application level. And so most of the time, people don't care whether their digital tokens in their application are on a cloud or on a blockchain. The people who build those applications do, and the people who take care to construct new businesses that make use of new technology, sure as hell do. Mm-hmm. I was listening to any number of podcasts this week, Tim Draper and others talking about AI is probably going to make the first trillionaire and more millionaires faster than the internet ever had, because we get to go faster now. And if we're able to harness quantum in the same way, maybe we will. But nobody really grew a business because they used a better cloud provider. Bill and I, who've been through the IBM cloud wars with all of the other clouds that are out there that are better or not as good as IBM's wonderful cloud, will tell you, honestly speaking, at the end of the day, the cloud you use does not impact the success of your business, or at least not in the way IBM tells you it will. It's that you are using cloud or not. Is that you are using cloud and mobility or sensors or IoT or digital assets or whatever else it is that goes with it. And so the marketing part here is, yes, you do have, I guess, interest in the public domain, but you've got a slightly more poignant marketing challenge, which is getting engagement with the builders of applications and businesses, and then being able to talk to them in context. Final point on this one, because this matters. As I said, I can go around saying that I have got a higher Nakamoto coefficient than you have in your blockchain, and therefore you should use mine. And the person on the other side will say, I don't care. I just need it to be secure enough and to be decentralized and to have tokens or whatever it is that I need the blockchain to do. Everybody will tell you they've got a better blockchain. What you can actually say is, I'm really good at making use of decentralized technology in the context of traditional finance. Or I have a tool set that makes integration, as Bill said, into manufacturing applications or B2B or existing legacy systems like SAP, Fiserv, take your pick. They'll work with you because you can provide them technology as a service in context, not because you've got the better mousetrap or the better blockchain or the greater level of decentralization. So these are the challenges, not letting normies understand why quantum is going to be amazing or scary. They'll make their own mind up based on the media or whatever else is out there. The marketeer's job is to find the next millionaires or to find the enterprises where the technology really can turn the needle and go hard in that space.
I love the way you put it, Anthony. And there's, and beyond with that question, I'll come to you. There's another very interesting angle around the whole importance of quantum that we're facing in the industry today. The traditional blockchains or traditional businesses who are heavily invested into technologies, let's say, for example, Bitcoin, I'm not calling it out, will always come out and say, you don't have to worry about quantum security. Like on every second day, Michael Saylor buys more Bitcoin, and it's out in the world that Bitcoin does not have to worry about quantum security. And then there is another section which is saying, hey, you have to, right? So one is marketing it, selling it, and conveying it in a way, Anthony, 100% agree with you, the way you put it, that the larger world understands. And second is competing with these larger institutional narratives, which come out and say, hey, you don't have to worry about it, maybe. John, what's your take on that?
So let me refer back to one thing, which is about the gradual improvement first, if I may. Which is, I think here is actually a point where quantum computing is not a gradual improvement. Like if you look at traditional computing, whether that's AI or not, doesn't even matter. AI is still using traditional processor architectures. we have seen the gradual improvement. I mean, Moore's law and stuff like that, and that has been very predictable. And kind of the computers got faster, bigger, whatever, but it was still the same computer. A quantum computer is not the same computer. A quantum computer uses completely different physics and then achieves like a greater efficiency at some problems, which is like completely out of reach for classical computers. Like however we scale them, this is completely out of reach if we ever build large enough quantum computers. So this is kind of not realized today, but if we get to there, this is really a different magnitude. One thing is breaking cryptography, which is, as you mentioned, factoring before, which would be RSA or discrete logarithm like elliptic curve. So those things suddenly get from practically intractable as during the lifetime of any one of us and our children and whatever on a classical computer to just like very short amounts, seconds, whatever, I don't know, on a quantum computer. Like this is not the same thing, right? This is not gradual. This is a completely different paradigm. And it's kind of, quantum computing has such great applications, which are like optimization gets a lot better, which is like you can do physical simulations to whatever, develop new materials or medicine or whatever. Like there's tons of things where quantum computing is really good. Kind of unfortunately, it also breaks cryptography. This part of the quantum computing is not really good for anything, right? It just destroys cryptography. So this is just what I wanted to point out. Like it's not. I don't think it's fair here to say it's great. This is a shift that comes with a moment that quantum computers become large enough to actually execute all these kind of interesting algorithms which they're not today. So they're not stable for a sufficient period of time. But once we get there, we suddenly enter a new growth phase. So and then it's going to be gradual again. But I think this is a typical. And then maybe relating back to Anthony, I think like also in ICP land, we've also been doing naming and marketing and so on wrong from time to time, naming things very technically, and then we have to explain what that technique is.
I love what you do, but watching the boss man speak on stage, it is rocket science, and that's okay if the audience is rocket scientists, right? So when Damien's up on stage, it's okay because most of the time he is talking to rocket scientists, but anybody outside of that, it can get a little bit challenging. I want to help.
So this is something that I think, I agree that the entire industry is doing this, using all these weird terms that are describing what the system technically does, but don't really mean anything to people unless they want to understand what the system technically does. And this is definitely something we as an entire industry have to improve in, and be more focused on what can the users actually do with this.
Understood. Bill, your view on this?
Yeah, we've developed, I mean, it touches on a number of points you're all bringing up, and we call it's really application use case categorization and identifying. And I use the same approach with blockchain, in terms of if you're going to come into the enterprise and use it, you've got to meet certain toll gate criteria. So we call it the quantum advantage. And it's really at the front, 3 doors to open. Number one, does the customer have a compute problem? Are you absolutely certain your compute stack can't solve the business problem you're trying to solve? Door 2, or B, is it the basket of technologies around compute, bandwidth, latency, and network, storage, application data models? Okay, there could be other factors that's not purely compute or hardware. Okay, and then the killer one, C, is, do you have a conventionally insoluble optimization problem that your industry has been struggling with for decades, and you're satisfied solving 80% of it in terms of the Pareto principle? Now, you look at quantum and bring it in, if it's any combination of A, B, and C, and they're not mutually exclusive. Okay, once those are answered, then we've categorized 60 to 70 use cases across 6 or 7 verticals, okay, in terms of impact prioritization. And of relevance here, number 1 is regulatory compliance. Okay, the US government, governments around the world are becoming more crypto friendly. Well, the risk models, Monte Carlo, are they sufficient for arbitrage, for portfolio optimization for digital assets and crypto? Not likely in all situations. So you need a better mousetrap, okay, which is really a combination of more compute potentially, the basket of technologies around it be, and now you have a conventionally insoluble business problem, digital assets from a portfolio risk on return perspective, that the existing algorithm, Monte Carlo, may not be sufficient, and a quantum algorithm may be. So there's kind of a filtering mechanism, okay, that lets lets quantum in the door, okay, and then the other impact vectors in terms of prioritization for execution for the applications would be product development, innovation speed, product development, material science, new financial instruments. Okay, can quantum do things like that faster in conjunction with blockchain? You get my point. So it's a very regimented application filtering perspective that also is covering concerns around security. So
very interesting. Anna, what do you think about the whole communication aspect when it comes to the deep tech technologies like quantum security, the things that we have discussed right now?
Well, the communication demands developing new language often, because you have people that come with various expertise. They use, I think in the cyber, you have all the, abbreviations that means absolutely nothing to other groups of people. So suddenly if you have quantum is dominated by people with physics background, you have computer scientists, you have cryptographic people, and then they all have to first figure it out, a language in between themselves. Once they got there and they kind of got, that's easy because it's, it's the crowd that is excited about learning new things typically. So they are not a problem, but how do you tell it to your grandma? And then it starts to be problematic. Grandma is not important, but grandma still votes, and a lot of stuff impacts what people are in a decision-making places, and they need to be open to the conversations on technology that is moving very fast. And even scientists and people that are deeply in there sometimes make bold statements, but the truth is they themselves should be humbled by the complexity of what they actually dealing with. And now you stand in between this, should you be overhyping to make people afraid and make them emotionally driven, or maybe you really have to go down and understand these marketing aspects that you and Tanya say, like you need to speak to people about the value that they can connect with. And I found it very interesting when I started to talk to people about teleportation that have no interest in physics at all. And it opens up many places in their mind, like, oh, it's sci-fi, but that's it, that they don't see any link to a real life or technological developments. And I was taken by surprise. Actually, I went to a doctor and I told her, she just asked me what I do, like checkup and so on. And then I was like, I'm building like entanglement source, for future networks. And she's like, is that with security? I was like, yes. And she's like, yes, because I am so not impressed with the way we are treating data of our patients in a hospital. We are not having any system that protects this private data on our computers, and she had all opinion about data security, that the systems were not upgraded, that she thought that once she had an access to the data, basically she had access to any data about that person. And there was nothing stopping her to, just see it. And she felt like it has not changed over so many years. And that is a good point. People do actually have an opinion. I think we sometimes forget that in the end, we've been interacting with the technology, with our cell phones a lot. and people start to grasp the data, the security, the identity, and that it has to be done. And interestingly, they don't care how on the parameters,
Right.
but they can see that the system is wrong, that the paradigm of the way they authenticate, is flawed. They can see that. She was totally aware that it was not about the passwords, it was about security, it was about the design of the product that was completely flawed. And I think we should listen to them, because we need to convince them, but we also can learn from them about what it makes to create a good product, despite, no matter what the technology is, and then we can figure out how to market it to them. And they care way more than sometimes we would see.
Yeah. That's such an amazing point, Anna. And as one of the initiatives that we took to spread awareness about the whole quantum and blockchain convergence was we launched a world tour, beuncrackable.com. We have been over 30 locations across the globe to spread awareness about the importance of quantum security. And there's one message in common that I've always loved to spread. Technology is built by humans for humans. So as long as it solves the problems and the person that you're solving the problem for understands the importance of it, only then it is a success. Otherwise, it's not. And really appreciate the way you put it. I think this has been such a phenomenal conversation, and we have touched upon so many nuances that we can go so much deep into. But in the interest of time, I would love to invite each one of you to share a closing statement for 2 minutes, please. Starting with you, Bjorn, please.
Yeah, maybe if we get to problems that we as a society should care about, it's like, I think we all live in a physical world. We understand ownership. We understand how that all works. We have very strict rules on how this is governed. No one can just walk into your house and take your stuff and whatever. And then I think if we now look into the digital space, we kind of abandon all of this. If you just consider how much we all today entrust to like big tech, right? All of our private data, all our mails and photographs and whatever is on their stuff. All our private data is basically governed by a few US corporations, and we have very little control over this. If today Google or IBM not so much, Google or Apple or Microsoft decide to kind of close your account, like what part of your private life is gone, right? And so this is kind of that's the reason why I'm in blockchain space, actually. I think this is something where we as a society are getting something completely off. I think we're all not thinking about this enough. Like, how do we want the world that we are going into, where digital data and all these topics get more and more important? Like, how do we want the world to look like for our kids, right? And I don't want the world to look like what we're right now going into. AI kind of seems to accelerate this even more right now, because it's all governed by big tech, getting more and more access to our data. So I think this is something where I think we have to, especially as the Web3, the blockchain community, we have to really make sure that the world goes into the right direction. And for this, we need people like Anthony to communicate the importance of these solutions to the broader public. And hopefully we can turn this around and land on a better future. That's my closing statement.
Thank you so much, Ron. Love it. Bill?
Yeah, one thing we didn't touch upon that much in this discussion is culture. Okay, and at the intersection of technology adoption and acceleration and convergence. And my experience in China there for 4 years, and why they've leapfrogged the West. Well, 50 to 70 years ago, they were an agricultural economy. They turned over their data privacy to the government and industry to accelerate their livelihood and leapfrog us. Okay, that's a key point. And, I go back to a famous quote from Peter Drucker, okay, that said, something around strategy or culture eats strategy for breakfast, if you remember that quote, some of you, right? Well, I kind of pivoted that in the sense, or turned it on its head in the sense that if your strategy doesn't address culture, all you're addressing is breakfast and forgetting lunch and dinner. And China is a great example in that regard, and tying the thread together, the security is a given. That's what we're talking about here. It's not, and it touches on what Anthony said, Anna said, and also you said, Jorn. It's a given. It has to be there. There's nothing sexy about it. If it's not there, all the hype and the technology, bells and whistles and balloons and gala is thrown by the wayside. So it's got to evolve. And it has to evolve in context to culture, what's accepted in different parts of the world and at a global level. So.
Very, very interesting. Thank you for sharing that, Bill.
Yep.
Anna, your closing statement, please.
I guess to add, right, to not repeat, those are all good points we touched upon. I think that we, more than ever, really need to reflect, take time and reflect of what we are as humans and what is good for us. Because we already gave the cards to technology to define how we behave. And it's going completely out of hand. We are having AI dictate how we speak, but we also basically outsource that the AI would write something better, that it will know better, that it will analyze better. And we need to take a pause. I mean, I'm all pro technology, but what it means for us as society, where we actually trust machines more than we trust ourselves, and if the machine influence how we should speak, how we word ourselves, they influence how we think, and they already have a lot of tests on that. People have less conflict way of communicating. And as that sounds positive on the surface, but in principle, you need to have arguments. You need to be able to get to conflicting situations to resolve them. So we need to reflect how now use not maybe only technology, like not only AI, not only quantum, not only security, but also governance. And because we have more as a society, we developed more than just, hardware that computes something. We also have laws, and they should all be now updated. I think we've been a bit slow on all those sides, and we need to make sure that the way we develop, it serves us and not we serve the technology, and that technology completely wipes off of who we are as humans, because it teaches us how to talk and do, and we don't know what would be the alternative, and we need to define what it is. What is the alternative? Otherwise, are we even secure? I mean, who cares? We have a great security if AI tells me exactly what to eat and do, and I just follow the whatever is there. Like, am I really secure, or I'm just like or the coin has flipped and now I am the robot, because someone just tells me what to do all the time. I just leave it like that.
Thank you so much, Anna. Anthony, your closing remarks, please.
All right. I mean, firstly, thank you very much indeed for giving me the opportunity to sit and listen to four incredibly talented individuals with way more technical depth than I will ever dream of. I've learned a lot today, so I hope those listening in have also. But thank you to all of you for sharing your points of view. I guess to add some color in closing is probably to help people think about, well, what do I do next? For those people who aren't already quantum scientists, how do I take something out of this conversation and what do I do with it? Much like AI, the impact of quantum or blockchain or other emerging technology is not going to go back in the box, and the pace of change is never going to be slower than it is today. Think about that one. Basically, we now have accelerants, we have automation, we have the ability to vibe code, create prototypes, create businesses, to fundraise faster than we ever before. And that technology is in the hands of 10-year-olds, 14-year-olds, 90-year-olds. It doesn't matter. This technology is accessible to everybody, and it's going to get easier and faster. That can create a lot of fear and uncertainty. And for the most part, it can be justified. But maybe a few small facts. The good guys and the bad guys both have quantum. So those people who are looking at ways to try and break existing cryptography, there are just as many Bjorns or Bills or Annas who are trying to build new and more advanced cryptography. So there is an equal interest in helping to secure the things that were gone before and make sure that we're secure in the future. So if you spend too much time thinking about the nefarious implications of emerging tech, you forget about all of the positive benefits that we've had from digital identity, from the internet, from being able to digitally secure our passwords, to be able to use cloud technology for backups as opposed to having to keep physical paper copies of stuff all the time. Depends how paranoid you are about your private keys, but still, these are technology innovations that have improved. The implications of these technologies typically occur at the application level. So as you start putting them into ChatGPT saying, what the hell should I worry about with quantum? Ask it not an abstract question like that, ask it a specific question. As me, a person of my age and my gender, living where I am with a family and doing what I do, what are the applications where quantum has the most implications for me? And then figure out, do you feel excited, scared, nervous, or like you want to go and run a business with it? Mm-hmm. Because again, out of context and with complicated language that feels impenetrable and difficult to engage with, you're not going to be able to give an objective assessment on, how do I feel about this? And the nice thing is now that we have the era of AI where information can be put in context much quicker. And so use your AI to help you engage with this conversation, take a rational point of view, because whether you like change or not, it's coming and there's literally nothing you can do about it. That's my final. I was hoping that would be a positive and kind of reaffirming close, but maybe it's a little bit of both.
No, I mean, change is good. It's just the way of looking at it. Thank you so much for sharing that, Anthony. And once again, thank you so much, Bjorn, Bill, Anna, Anthony, for taking out your precious time and joining the Uncrackable conversation. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners who tuned in live, as well as through our media partners, this episode will reach more than 20 million viewers as well as readers through multiple mediums. I'm sure they're going to learn a lot. Thank you so much for joining in. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kapil. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend when you get there.
Bye-bye.
Bye.